Andrew, Mountbatten, Windsor, A Narcissist's Fall. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. The tale of Andrew, as he's now known, is a demonstration of give the narcissist enough rope. How, with the unaware narcissist, the necessity of focus on the moment results in collateral consequences coming to visit at a later juncture. Once regarded as his mother's favourite son, who went on to become a Falklands War hero, the former prince is now simply Andrew Mountbatten Windsor after his fall from grace. His playboy lifestyle and continued association with Jeffrey Epstein after the American tycoon's conviction for sex offences has led to him being stripped of his royal titles and ordered to leave his Windsor home for exile at Sandringham. The king hopes his errant sibling will remain in quiet solitude in Norfolk with an appropriate private pension paid by the king rather than the sovereign grant, but history suggests this might not necessarily be the case. The palace declined to rule out the possibility of the former prince being given York Cottage, which was earmarked for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex before they left royal life. The descent has been relatively gradual. Andrew once appeared secure in his position as the second in line to the throne and one of the most popular members of the monarchy. During his Royal Navy service, which included using his helicopter to draw Argentinian missiles away from British troopships during the retaking of the Falklands, he became Randy Andy, the debonair royal. His marriage to Sarah Ferguson in 1986 was watched by millions and cemented his position as one of the favourite members of the royal family. His mother gave him the title of Duke of York, and he appeared to settle down to a life of duty. The births of Beatrice and Eugenie added to the dynasty. The Duke and Duchess's separation and subsequent divorce in 1996 did not harm their reputation. The couple remained close and maintained an apparently insatiable demand for money. The somatic aspects of his narcissism clear in that instance. There has always been disquiet among senior palace courtiers and Whitehall mandarins about his relationships. The former prince cultivated friendships with foreign ruling families, particularly in the Middle East and former Soviet states in Central Asia. He was appointed the government's special representative for international trade and investment from 2001 and continued official duties on behalf of his mother until 2019. He became known as Air Miles Andy amid growing criticism for his globe-trotting jaunts, entitlement, and has faced questions over his connections to politicians in Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Tunisia, Libya and Turkmenistan. In 2007, he sold Sunninghill, the house near Ascot, that was a wedding gift from his mother. The buyer was Timur Kulybiev, son-in-law of the then-president of Kazakhstan, who paid £3 million over the £12 million asking price. Andrew made regular official and private trips to Kazakhstan, with reports that he was working for businesses bidding for contracts in the country. The former prince moved to the Royal Lodge in Windsor, having bought the lease from the Crown Estate with the promise to carry out renovations. He had been paying a peppercorn rent. Simon Wilson, Britain's deputy head of mission in Bahrain from 2001 to 2005, has described the former prince as being more commonly known among the British diplomatic community in the Gulf as HBH, His Buffoon Highness, which again is demonstrative of his cocky status, his arrogance, his bluster, his sense of entitlement. A leak of US diplomatic cable showed a US ambassador describing him as rude and cocky. Andrew's closeness to Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, the playboy son of the dictator of Libya, was one of the reasons he was stripped of his role as the government's special representative in 2011. Note, the necessity of cozying up to a controversial figure resulted in a collateral consequence. In 2011, it also emerged that he was friends with Epstein, who was sentenced to 18 months in prison in 2008 for soliciting a minor for prostitution. The publication of a photograph of Andrew with his arm around Virginia Giuffre, then 17, alongside Ghislaine Maxwell, was the first step on the path that eventually led to his downfall. Epstein is believed to be the man behind the camera at Maxwell's home in Mayfair, central London. It emerged this month that instead of using the controversy to end his relationship with Epstein, Andrew sent the convicted paedophile an email assuring him that we are in this together and expressing the wish to play some more soon. See parts pass him, sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy. Giuffre later alleged that she was procured for Andrew by Epstein, whom she accused of using her as a sex slave. She claimed to have had sex with Andrew 3 times, including one orgy. The former prince vehemently denies the allegation. Sense of entitlement, lack of emotional empathy, denial, the first line of the twin lines of the narcissistic defence. Earlier this month, Andrew was forced to give up his dukedom and other honours before the publication of Giuffre's posthumous memoirs. It was an attempt to draw a line under his long-running controversies. But the revelations kept coming. It emerged that Andrew tried to get the Metropolitan Police to dig up dirt for a smear campaign against Giuffre, and there were further admissions about his property and financial arrangements. The prospect of new, damaging information emerging from the Epstein files held by members of the US Congress also loomed large. In 2019, he gave his now notorious interview to Emily Maitlis on BBC Newsnight in November of that year. He claimed to have no recollection of meeting Giuffre and added that he could not have had sex with her in March 2001 because he was at a Pizza Express restaurant with Beatrice. The interview was dubbed a car crash, with commentators questioning his responses and condemning his unsympathetic tone for victims and lack of remorse. 4 days later, Andrew released a statement confirming that he was stepping back from public duties for the foreseeable future, with permission from his mother, the late Queen. Giuffre sued Andrew in New York, and he agreed an estimated £12 million settlement. Her family said yesterday she brought down a British prince with her truth and extraordinary courage. While Andrew was dragging the reputation of the royal family through the mud, Ferguson, who maintained her title of Duchess following her divorce, was also proving a PR disaster. It began with the infamous toe-sucking scandal in which she featured in intimate photographs with financial advisor John Bryan on the French Riviera shortly after her separation from Andrew in 1992. Ferguson's divorce did not appear to dampen her instance for a regal lifestyle, with luxury holidays and a large entourage. In 2010, she was caught up in the Cash for Access scandal, offering to sell an introduction to Andrew for £500,000 to an undercover reporter posing as a businessman. Andrew's fate had appeared sealed last month when he tried to engage the Prince of Wales in conversation on the steps of Westminster Cathedral following the funeral of the Duchess of Kent. William did not respond, staring straight ahead and barely acknowledging the presence of the uncle, who will now be known simply as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. As a consequence of the litany of poor behaviour from Andrew, which is demonstrative of his narcissism, he's operated with a sense of entitlement, shown no accountability for his actions, maintains an insatiable desire for sex and for money, that he is a freeloader, that he's grandiose, dismissive, arrogant, that he believes he's far more important than he actually is, that he believes he's entitled to behave as he requires and needs without any kind of check, balance or accountability, that he is deluded with regard to his level of ability and importance, and time again has exhibited an absence of emotional empathy for those affected by his behaviours, whether it ranges from the people that have worked for him, the people that have met him, and the people that he has been courting. The result of all of this is the collateral consequence whereby the king has removed Andrew's remaining titles and will evict him from the Royal Lodge. Last night, Buckingham Palace announced that he would now be simply known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, confirming that Andrew had surrendered the lease on his Windsor home after weeks of allegations over his friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. The palace said the king and queen wanted to make clear that their sympathies had always rested with the victims of abuse. The former prince will relocate to a small property on the Sandringham estate in Norfolk, with its upkeep funded by the king. The Sandringham estate is private, which means therefore any arrangements will not be open to scrutiny. As it was with him staying on the Crown estate, It meant that pressure had been building politically and publicly with regard to Andrew remaining in the Royal Lodge following the allegations. The fact is that it's likely that there are going to be further revelations about Andrew, potential police investigations, and quite simply as a consequence of growing government pressure, the King had to act. But all of this, of course, is as a consequence of the doing of Andrew, that time and time again, the way that he has functioned and operated in such an arrogant fashion has come back now, with those chickens coming to roost. The fact is that while he continued to deny the sex abuse allegations made against him, there had been serious lapses of judgment, the necessity of further action never being in doubt. The Prince of Wales was fully supportive of the King's leadership on the matter, a Kensington Palace source confirmed. Buckingham Palace released a statement which stated, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and honours of Prince Andrew. Prince Andrew will now be known as Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. His lease on Royal Lodge has to date provided him with legal protection to continue in residence. Formal notice has now been served to surrender the lease, and he will move to alternative private accommodation. These censures are deemed necessary, notwithstanding the fact that he continues to deny the allegations against him. Their Majesties wish to make clear that their thoughts and utmost sympathies have been and will remain with the victims and survivors of any and all forms of abuse. Accordingly, for Andrew, the loss of the property that he has stayed in for the last 20 years, the loss of his titles and styles, and, in effect, the public condemnation of his behaviours. Whilst there are some that still believe that he has been made a scapegoat in relation to the scandal involving Epstein, whereby other individuals, more powerful, more prominent than Andrew, remain unspoken about and untouched by the press, the fact is he has been certainly hung out to dry. But it isn't just in relation to Epstein. Time and time again, his entitled behaviour has meant that he has taken money from individuals which has compromised his position and that of the Crown, that he is engaged in behaviour which has at best been seen as unbecoming, in some instances might even be viewed as criminal. All of this has been driven by his belief that he can do what he wants, that he's untouchable, and this is the core of his narcissism. Now, the collateral consequences have landed and have landed hard. How will this affect a narcissist such as him? Well, certainly, the loss of those titles and the status that comes with it is a severe body blow to him. As I have explained previously, and in particular in relation to this one's wife, the narcissist utilises titles because it is something that the narcissist can triangulate with other people to control them, to draw fuel, access residual benefits, and therefore the loss of them wounds him, and wounds him substantially. The fact that he is being evicted in effect from his property similarly wounds him, as there is a prestige associated with the size of the property in which he lived and the benefit that he would receive in relation to security arrangements. Being moved to a smaller property further away from London demonstrates that he is, in effect, being thrust into obscurity. Whilst you may think, well, this would come as no surprise to him, the impact is still going to be substantial upon him, shaking him to his core, affecting the pillars of his narcissism as a consequence of his sense of superiority being attacked. The fact is, he has suffered a substantial wounding. This is likely to cause him to enter into a period of retreat. He remains in denial. His narcissism still maintains that he has done nothing wrong. Remember, the way that he is programmed is that he's the victim in all of this, that he is the victim of a smear campaign, that he is the victim of unseen individuals that have plotted against him. He will feel a complete sense of frustration and exasperation, and will regularly rail against it to anybody who will listen. But the voices against him have grown louder, and the condemnation that he's received across the press from politicians and also the public has meant that, as a consequence of governmental pressure, the king has been moved to act. And the consequence is now that this is a substantial wounding for Andrew, being reduced in effect to the status of a commoner. Whilst he's royal born still, he loses the titles, he's lost the regal lifestyle, he has been accused of engaging in sexual offences, although nothing has been proven against him in that regard. Yet, of course, people repeatedly point out, if you'd done nothing wrong, why did you settle for £12 million? The fact is, the descent from where he was to where he is now is something which is, whilst not fatal for the narcissist, is certainly a massive wounding for someone who had such privilege and such an easy lifestyle. Parasitic, poncing off others, globe-trotting the world, having women left, right and centre, enjoying access to luxury. He's not exactly going to be sat in sackcloth and ashes, but is going to be far removed from what he once had. And the repeated reminders of what he has lost will cause him frequent, if not daily, wounding as a consequence of the memory of what he had and where he is now. It's certainly a situation that no narcissist would want to be put in, but he finds himself there now as simply Andrew, Mountbatten, Windsor. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.